You wake up thirsty. You walk to a tap, turn a handle, and water appears. Pause. You don't think about where it came from or what it took to get there. It is simply there, instantly, every single time. But for almost the entire span of human existence, finding water was not a guarantee. It was a problem, a daily life or death problem, solved not by luck, but by one of the most sophisticated forms of reasoning the human mind has ever produced. Pause, and understanding how ancient humans found water tells you something startling about how your own mind still works today. Here is what is actually happening. For most of human history, you did not live near a river you could see. You lived in landscapes where water was hidden, seasonal, buried, or miles away, and where a wrong guess could kill you within days. So how did early humans solve this problem again and again, across deserts, savannas, and drylands, without maps, without instruments, without written knowledge? Pause. The answer is not instinct. It is not magic. It is something closer to science, built entirely inside the human mind, and passed down before writing ever existed. Consider the Kalahari Desert, one of the driest environments on Earth, where the Sand People have lived for tens of thousands of years. In much of the Kalahari, there is no visible surface water for most of the year. And yet the sand survived there, not by chance, but through an extraordinary skill called tracking. Emphasis. Tracking is not simply following footprints. Emphasis. It is reading an entire landscape as a story written in disturbed sand, bent grass, and the subtle signs of animal behavior. Anthropologist Louis Liebenberg has spent decades studying sand trackers, and what he found reshaped how scientists think about the origins of human reasoning itself. Liebenberg observed that expert trackers do not simply recognize patterns, they form hypotheses. Seeing a set of tracks, a tracker might propose that an animal traveled this way at dawn, moving slowly, likely heading toward water because of the shape and depth of its stride. Then the tracker tests that hypothesis against further evidence, adjusting the theory as new signs appear. Pause. This is not folklore. Liebenberg argued that this process, forming an explanation, testing it against evidence, revising it when wrong, is functionally identical to the scientific method, and that it likely predates written science by tens of thousands of years. Finding water in a place with no visible water meant thinking like a scientist, long before science had a name. And animals themselves became a kind of map. Certain birds, like sand grouse, fly in and out of remote waterholes on incredibly predictable daily schedules, often at dawn and dusk. Trackers learn to read the direction and timing of bird flight the way you might read a compass. A gemsbox trail, a jackal's fresh prints, the flight path of a single bird at the right hour, all of it could be decoded into a single piece of information. Emphasis: water is this way. Emphasis. But tracking was only half the answer. Even once you knew roughly where water might be, you often had to extract it from places that did not look like they held any water at all. In parts of the Kalahari, the sand dug what are known as sip wells, narrow holes pushed a meter or more into damp sand in dry riverbeds, using a hollow reed to draw water up from underground moisture that never breaks the surface. To an outsider, that patch of sand looks indistinguishable from any other. To someone who has learned to read subtle changes in vegetation, soil color, and insect activity, it is an obvious sign. Pause. The water was never truly hidden. It only looked that way to someone who did not know what to look for. This same skill of reading indirect evidence about water appears again and again across unrelated environments. In the deserts of Australia, Aboriginal communities tracked the specific plants and animal behaviors that revealed underground water and passed this knowledge down through generations using songlines, oral maps encoded in story and song that stretched across enormous distances of land. In the Sahara, desert nomads learned to recognize the type of vegetation that only grows above buried water. None of these were separate discoveries. They were the same underlying cognitive skill, applied by different groups in different deserts, entirely independent of one another. Human beings, wherever they lived, developed the same basic strategy. Read the landscape as evidence and reason your way to what is hidden beneath it. Water, once found, still had to survive the journey home, and this created an entirely separate problem across many desert cultures. In the Kalahari, the sand solved it by using ostrich eggshells as portable containers, carefully emptying the contents through a small hole, then filling the shell with water and burying it, sometimes for months, in hidden caches scattered across their territory. Pause. These were not random hiding spots. Each cache was remembered precisely, often marked by a distinctive tree, rock formation, or subtle change in terrain, and the location was shared carefully within the group because a single buried eggshell of water, found months later during a lean season, could mean the difference between moving on safely and not moving at all. In effect, entire communities built something like a hidden, memorized network of water storage across a landscape that looked to any outsider completely dry and empty. Now here is where the story gets stranger, and where it connects to something much larger than water. This same drive to locate water may have shaped one of the most distinctive traits in human biology: your ability to run for extremely long distances. Harvard biologist Daniel Lieberman has spent years studying the evolution of human endurance, and his research suggests that early humans evolved specifically for a hunting strategy called persistence hunting, chasing prey animals for hours across open, hot terrain until the animal overheated and collapsed. Because humans, almost uniquely among mammals, can sweat efficiently enough to keep running in extreme heat when four-legged animals cannot. Pause. This same physiology, built for tracking prey over vast distances in punishing heat, is also exactly what you would need to travel far enough and endure long enough to search for water sources that might be many miles from camp. Your body was not simply built to survive in dry, difficult places. It was built to actively search them. And it was not only humans doing this kind of searching. In East Africa, researchers studying elephant populations discovered something remarkable during a severe drought in Tanzania in 1993. Herds, led by older matriarchs, elephants who had lived through a previous major drought decades earlier, survived at significantly higher rates than herds led by younger matriarchs who had no memory of it. Researchers studying these populations concluded that the older elephants remembered the location of distant water sources from a drought that had occurred so long ago that most of the herd had not even been born yet. That memory, carried across decades inside a single individual, quite literally kept entire family groups alive. Pause. Humans did the same thing, only instead of storing that knowledge in one long-lived matriarch's memory, they encoded it into stories, songs, and tracking knowledge passed carefully from elder to child, generation after generation, precisely because a single, lost piece of water knowledge could end a family's survival. So when you strip all of this down, what were ancient humans actually doing when they found water in a landscape that appeared to have none? They were reading indirect evidence. They were forming a hypothesis about what that evidence meant. They were testing that hypothesis against further observation, and they were preserving whatever worked, generation after generation, refining the method every time. Emphasis. That is not a primitive skill. Emphasis. That is the same reasoning process still sitting underneath your own mind today, whether you are diagnosing why your car won't start, guessing what a friend's short text message really means, or piecing together a decision from incomplete information. You inherited this. Every time you take a few scattered clues and reason your way to a conclusion, you are running the same basic software that once meant the difference between finding water and not finding it at all. You wake up thirsty. You walk to a tap, turn a handle, and water appears. Pause. But underneath that simple motion is tens of thousands of years of a mind built to solve exactly the problem the tap has quietly solved for you. The searching never disappeared. Pause. You just stopped noticing you were still doing it.